I think that was the point you just made. Where are your customers getting their education? How are they getting their education? How do they like to consume education on other things?
Welcome, everybody, and thanks again for joining us for yet another session of Working Out Loud. I'm your host, Dave Darrington. I am the Director of Customer Education here at Service Rocket. And today, as usual, I like to intro or preface this discussion we have. We're working out loud to solve educational problems and learn about technology that you might not have even seen or heard about, or problems that are kind of the countervailing forces against us doing great work. I always like to say, if you're not learning, you're churning. And that's what we're trying to fight against in B2B SaaS. Today, I have a special guest on. This is exciting, but let me frame up our discussion before we get into it. I'm going to be talking with Sharon Castillo, my friend who works now at Okta, and we have a discussion around software. And you know, we're in customer education, and our job is to help customers really understand, grok, use, learn, and adopt the platforms that we have in a human way. One of the things that I think that, and Sharon, you brought this up, and I want you to introduce yourself and then talk about where you came up with this perspective, because it's really good. What is the customer education experience from the user perspective, their experience, right? And what I mean by that is, hey, we're so busy as businesses, like, oh yeah, the customer needs this, and let's make a course for this, and let's go do this thing, and blah, blah, blah. You know, where's the customer? That's why we call this customer education. It's customer centric. The customer, again, might be a partner. It might be an internal employee, but it's definitely someone that is paying for your platform. All right, so let's get into it. Welcome, Sharon. Can you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit tell the audience about yourself, where you're at, what you're up to, and what, lead into the question for the day.
Sure. So I'm calling in from snowy Boston, and I've been in customer education for like a gajillion years. I won't say when I started. And I started out in a really technical space. So I started out teaching and creating content for developers primarily. And I've been at small software companies and growth companies, helping them. I've evolved over time, thinking about how do you not just teach people to use your software, but really, how do you make sure that they become customers for life? How do you get them to adopt? How do you get them to expand? And you talk about this on the show all the time. So,
it's
how do you
business, right? It's business.
Yeah, it's business. It's business. So I like to think, training, you talk about, oh, I wish they cared about education, but we're not an education company. We're a software company. So it's business. And so I'm at Okta now, and we're evolving the training to that next level of maturity and how to be just more impactful. And every education group I've ever been in, we think about education like, from our little silo of education world and making the most beautiful education could possibly make. But as a user of software, if you go to every company's website, they have content that's the knowledge base, and they have content that's training, and they have content that's in the doc that says it's a tutorial, and they have something called getting started somewhere, which is also training, but probably doesn't live in training, and content and community. And as a user, I'm like, well, where am I supposed to go? And which thing is which? And what am I supposed to use? I just want to get this one thing done and move on. And so we're not thinking about it from the perspective of the user. Generally, we're thinking about it from the perspective of the company org chart. Like, this department creates this kind of content, and this department creates this kind of content, and training makes this kind of content. And we're all running around making things for the user, and we're all thinking about the user, but it's not integrated as an experience for that person as a unified thing.
Okay, you have really framed that up. So again, you're saying, I want to go back a little bit and think about I wish I don't have the graphic up, and I'm thinking about the crossing the chasm, the curve, right? And as you talked, I'm going, oh my gosh, all these memories are coming back where I'm at this company and we're really small. And I'm at this company. Now I'm in the middle of the journey. And I'm at this company. I'm later. There's all these challenges around what is it the customer needs to actually do their job? And that's what you're talking about, right? I mean, where do you even start? Half the time you're coming in cold, you don't have anything. But what I wanted to say from my perspective is this, in my response to how you said that, now I'm thinking about that company, like, how does this problem actually emerge? Is it because I'm kind of leading you here, but is it because that when we are a company, and you talked silos and you talked about how all these different people are doing different things, is it because we're just moving so fast that we don't slow down enough to go, all right, I'm the VP of whatever, I'm even the CEO, and I say, you know what, we're going to get our stuff together. And I want to bring all this stuff together so you're all working towards the same goals, which is educating that customer. I don't know, where does that actually start? Like, you've been at a bunch of companies, Sharon, just like I have. Why do we get that problem in the first place?
I think one is the speed, and two is the amount of information that everybody has to deal with in a day. How many emails do you get in a day? How many, we have a release coming out and there's a topic, whatever it is, a feature, right? And whoever the person is who's responsible for that feature says, everybody needs to know about that feature. So marketing, go do something and have information out about that feature. And training, you need something about that feature. And documentation, you need something about that feature, right? And everybody runs around and does something about that feature instead of saying, wait a minute, instead of all of us running around doing something about a feature, what is the role of each of these things and how do they play together from the customer's perspective to work? And by the way, do you even need training on said feature, or whatever it is? Like, is documentation enough, or is whatever, or all the different things? Like, what are the things people need? And what's the maturity when a company is new, or when a space is new? Like, I was in machine learning for a while, and when it's an emerging space, you also have to teach people all about the space and all of that. You have to teach people more, and as it matures, or as a user matures, you have to teach them less, but everybody treats every user the same, as if they have to start at the beginning.
Yeah. So you're really talking about, I think, this concept of you're mapping the customer's journey. And I don't see enough companies actually slow down to do this. Many do, but then even that data doesn't get to everybody within your organization at times. I know, Sharon, one of the things that I've done, I see this problem a lot. And one of the things that I do at Service Rocket is we have this advisory type strategic workshop approach where we go, hey, everybody, hey, let's all, directors, VPs, execs, let's sit down at a table. I don't know if you've ever done this before, but it's really hard to do that. If you're this person like you are right now, and you're in the company, and you're in one of those silos, you're like, it's like, I'm Sharon, and I've done all this great stuff, and I've been at these companies before, and oh my God, now I see this problem. Jim's off doing support docs. Okay, Jim, go Jim. Jane's off doing enablement stuff for partners. Judy is doing enablement for customer success. And Sharon's got the customer education team. And then there's three others. There's a certification team. There's another team. Are all these people pursuing the same goal? No. Frankly, they're all like this, heads down. Yep. I'm working. I don't want to hear you. I just want to get my thing done because I got a performance review, and they're judging me on the quality of my work. Not did we actually meet the goal, which is why I think what you're saying, what I'm saying is that we all need to get in strategic alignment and slow down to speed up and sit down and talk about what is the business of customer education? What's the language we need to be speaking with the leadership? And what is it that they can tell us and we can own, and then boom, break all up into those silos and get the work done. But I'm missing something there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been able to work it backwards. I have the other gets into sort of politics and territories and things and is a little loaded, but you can work it the other way sometimes. So a couple of years ago, I started a content roadmap, cross-functional. You get all the stakeholders in a room, and I do it quarterly. And it's an open meeting. I get anybody can come, not just stakeholders, but really and you get people who are from those different constituencies to come. And you say, look, this is what we are hearing. This is what we think are the gaps from a user perspective. Can you rate the relative priority of these things from a user perspective of the gaps? And then I just sit there and say, discuss. And then I'm like, sort of, and
talk amongst yourselves.
Talk amongst yourselves. And it's amazing because mostly what I thought I heard turns out not to be what we end up building. And the reason is because from everybody's perspective, like the customer success person who came to me, like what their hair was on fire about a week ago, was based on the last person they spoke to. And when you put it all up on the board in a different way where it's the things competing against each other of priority, and they look at the whole board and they see the whole board, all of a sudden it becomes clear, oh yeah, that was important in its own thing. But when you look at the big picture, it becomes different. And that one feature, that one product manager, like the world will come to an end if you don't have training on it. All of a sudden they were like, oh, in the bigger picture, a customer will adopt if we put a training about some other thing out there. And so if you have a limited amount of resources and I say, which of these things is training and which of these things could be documentation or a knowledge-based article or whatever, all of the sudden, or what about that topic? Because usually it's a topic they say. I said, well, what about that thing is it that a customer has a problem with? And then they tell me, and I said, but isn't that 2 paragraphs? Isn't that, what is it? Oh, that really is a training. We really do need a training on that. And sometimes that's a thing that isn't even in the product. It's something that comes before the product. It's
concept or a
concept or change management.
We could talk about that all day.
You could talk about that all day. So there's a lot of things that go along, or there's things that just frame up the training that would make them more successful, like an introductory level piece that people just don't get the training because they didn't understand the basic thing before they even got to the training.
Okay. Well, let's go back a little bit because I think the bulk of our conversation is, I want to make sure we hit this fully. That what we want to talk about is how we can do this better.
Mm-hmm.
We want to work out loud in the themes of, okay, well, I know the problem is, let me try to go recap it. Hey, I'm a little ticked off as an educator. I like your word haughty and annoyed because like I look over across the board and I see all this content springing up, and let's talk about your customer success manager with the hair on fire. I've had this constantly, and it's actually been worse than that too. And I'm sure you've had the same thing. You have an executive coming to you. Oh, it's the end of the world. It's COVID and now we have to redo everything. I'm in some leadership training right now too. And the thing that always keeps coming up is the reactive versus the proactive. Mm-hmm. That I feel like as much as like you're talking about a reactive instance. And your strategy, Sharon, I love this because what you said is, okay, everybody, just sit down. I can imagine this is evocative of being in a boardroom. You got whiteboards, and you go, here's a go up to the whiteboard and write down the things you needed me to get done, right? Or we want to get done as an organization. And then you go through and they go, okay, now prioritize it. One, put your vote on whatever. And then now you're doing this thing where you're strategically getting your leadership and your peers, maybe even your subordinates, all on the same page to understand why education is such a complicated technical problem. It is that we have to not just convey information, we have to bring this hand of stocks, support, training, whatever, to be a fist. Yep. And that takes an executive to do, I think.
I agree.
Or at least you have to, do you have a sponsor? Do you have a partner at Okta that you work with that helps to bring this together? Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or in the past, like, well, what are the great cases where you found that, oh my God, thank God you're helping me pull up and then get these other people all involved? What's your strategy around there?
You have to work cross-functionally in multiple places. Like you have to partner up with people in success. You have to partner up with people in product. You have to partner up with people in marketing, and you have to keep, working relationships across the whole life cycle of what it is, because also that's how you know what other content exists. Otherwise, you have no idea what people are planning or thinking or doing. And also, those meetings also are helpful because people say, oh, I didn't even realize they say, oh, I want something on X topic. I'm like, we built that last month. Which means we're not doing a good job of marketing what we built either. Like, that's on us. It's not just, again, a Mahadi thing. We can complain all we want that people don't know about our stuff, but there's lots of turnover in companies. People move from job to job, and the signal to noise ratio is so out of kilter so much. How are people they're not just going to read my email that went out that said, oh, there's this new course or there's this new topic or whatever. So there's a constant need to, if everybody was in that room and agreed that that's what we are going to build, then that means that they're going to know that even better when it comes out and share it with their people.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's do a pivot. I feel like I understand the problem space because I grok it. I feel it in my soul. It's painful. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to help, like you and I and others in this market who are starting to group up now and define what customer education is. I think this is one of the torches that I always bear. It's anybody can go out and write a course. You can take a CSM. And I've seen them do it. They'll go make a deck and they'll do all this stuff and they'll build training. And then they're really pissed off when I come in board and I'm like, I'm running a training program. And they're like, well, well, nobody knows you have that training. And it's just you with your little deck. And this is a team sport. And it needs strategic alignment. And we need to have everybody working at, and in some everybody's going to be busy. And I think that's why you're there. So let's do this. Let's talk about how we get better. I want to hear the Sharon version of this from your experience set. And again, you've been big in tech, you've done AI, now you're at Okta. How do you think we can really get ourselves? And again, I think our industry is generally doing this better now.
Yeah.
But I'm standing on a soapbox and I'm preaching to the world right now, as you are, that customer education is a thing. What it does is it helps companies strategically improve and deliver education to all people who need it about the platform that they have and the skills that are required to use it. This is not going into the learning and development land so much, but L&D teams should be able to use that because everybody needs to know the product and the company they go to work for a little bit. But then you have your partners, and this serves them because it's the canonical, this is how the platform works. But your enablement person there may take that and expand upon it. So I feel like customer education ends up being a font, the start or the source of a lot of this knowledge, or it's inclusive of these other functions and helping to bring it together.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it starts with that journey and the journey mapping and what's the maturity model of an individual and the maturity model of an organization that individual sits in. And if you map out the maturity of an individual, and it's tough because companies generally look at their persona. Yeah. And it's a lot of people don't know what persona they are. So if you don't know what persona you are, then you look at that map that the company says and they say, well, but I'm half of this and I'm half of that. And I work at a small startup and I'm a developer, I'm DevOps, I'm Ops, I'm FinOps, I'm chief cook and bottle washer, and now everything
which is legit sometimes.
Yeah. And so now I'm the janitor, I'm the whatever, right? So the problem is that a lot of education, old school style, was to build everything because I'm afraid they'll never come back.
Yeah.
And so if you've been through a POV, or if you've met with your CSM, or if you've seen training because you've Googled it and you saw something on TikTok that wasn't even created by the company, you don't want to start at the beginning, right? Because you're a little further on your journey. Right. And then you're just annoyed that the company is forcing you to go to a training that starts at the beginning, or maybe you just have a very uneven background and you need to fill in places, or maybe you went to some, external website and got old information. Like, you went to a Stack Overflow, but you got the wrong information from there. Yeah. And you need to be reset entirely. So in all of those cases, if you look at the customer journey, then what education does really well is they will look at skill trees of what does somebody need to do to be successful, and create skill trees. And yeah, that can be packaged into personas, but really, what are the skills that somebody needs to do? And from those skills, create chunks of training, but chunk it small enough that you can, I call them Legos, but like take those Legos and do them in ways that you can have on-ramps and off-ramps to them in different packaging so people can meet them where they're at.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, okay. So let me see if I understand this, because I want to frame it up again. We're talking about kind of a persona analysis. Who are the people in the neighborhood? Mm-hmm. I won't sing the song. Then it's how do they all fit? And I was showing, or I found my slides here that I wanted to talk through because I think they help. So you were talking about a maturity, and a maturity model is really very simple. Where are you in time as a company? Yep. So I think a first step is, before we even get into a life cycle understanding of where the customer is, understand where you are on this map, which is, hey, I've spent a lot of time in what I call ad hoc hell, or, Adam Evermescu is a friend of ours, C-Lab, ad hocatraz is what he calls it. We are in this really bad spot where we're just reacting. And I think that's kind of what happens across the board in our company, where somebody in CS, they made that deck, to train their own customers because nobody else had it. Or, we have a fire troll, now send Sally out because she's the subject matter expert, send them there, right? And then over time, what you're talking about is we're trying to get repeatable, scalable content that anybody knows where it is throughout the company, external and so on. And then we're trying to understand there's personas as well. The other thing I wanted to show was, let's look through the life cycle of customer success, right? And the point is, to your point, on-ramps and off-ramps. I love this concept. The immediate on-ramp is the onboarding, right? So you come to work and you're like, oh, you need to learn this new thing, Sherry. And you're like, great. Okay, what's my onboarding path? The onboarding path is that time when the product is set, it's implemented, it's ready to go. And you go, okay, I understand this. And we have somebody come and do a training, or we go on demand, or even better yet, it just gets delivered to me and it's 5 minutes. And I do that, right? But then what does the rest of the cycle look like? Like, what does it really look like adoption over time? That's not just one point. It's 3 months later. Are you still using the product? What are you doing? A year later, 2 years later. Oh, you might be churning. Well, how do we prevent that? And then we've got all of these activities that go in and around fluidly through all these different teams, including customer ed.
Well, and most customers have a lot of turnover anyways. And so they're constantly doing.
Well, it's not just internal, it's our companies have turnover.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So people are constantly, you're constantly have new people who are being introduced who weren't there at the beginning. So they don't have the same context either. So you have new users who come in who may have less context than the original users about why are we even using this product, or what does this product do? Because they come in cold, right? So they don't even, some of them may know less about it than the original users knew.
Right.
So they might need more background. And some users may come, like if a product's been around a long time, oh, I came from a company, I already got trained on XYZ parts of it, but they got all the best practices from their old company, and this company doesn't use those best practices, and now I need to be retrained on a different use case. But I already got some of the basics, so I need to start here and not here.
I adore what you're saying here for the reason that you are talking about business and software terminology that doesn't always get incorporated into education. Like concept of the use case. Let me tap on a couple of things here. When you talk about use case, it's simply what are you trying to do with the platform, right? So you're saying I was over here in this team and we did, or in this company we did it this way. This is, and now I'm over here and they don't do it that way anymore. So what was a best practice is actually not, because the best practice is situational, right? And that's the thing that we say. We try to develop an 80% training for people, knowing that it's always going to be a little bit different because your situation is different. You might have a different use case. You might have a different output. You might have different kinds of flows, but and that gets more complicated because how are you serving those different kind of markets?
Well, and this morning I was reading something you had put on LinkedIn, and it was about why you don't put like a million screenshots and why you have diagrams in your training. And because you want to give people a mental model, not, do exactly this, so that when your product changes, people aren't going to remember step. They're going to remember the mental map of how the product works. It's the same thing about how do you apply from use case to use case to use case. If you understand the underpinnings and you understand, now let's talk about your next use case. Let's give you training on how to do different kinds of use cases, but they don't have to start at the beginning again. Also, we don't have a lot of trust in our users. Like, they're never coming back, so I have to tell them everything. Well, they're not going to remember everything anyway. So like telling them everything isn't going to make it better training. Many years ago, I was still teaching, and a trainer came out of the room and he goes, "Man, that was a hard training. I got through all the material." And I looked at him, and it was like a 5-day training, and it was 6 o'clock in the evening. And I said, "Did your students get through it too?"
I think we've gotten a great soundbite from this episode. So you're referring to that kind of sage on the stage thing, aren't you?
The cognitive overload of like, let's just pack everything I've ever learned into this course.
Well, okay. So since I got you on, and this is great because I haven't gotten to talk with you like this. I think we've chatted back and forth, but now we're doing the stuff. Let's go back to the assets and the on-ramps, off-ramps, and other things you said, like in our notes, our show notes that we talked about CTAs. What are you going to do next? That's that whole story about like, oh, I've done that. I've been that trainer who's come in and just 5 days, dump. There's never a moment where I'm not talking. And I know that because, I've been a professor. I've done all this stuff. I know that cognitive overload is like, I'm out, man. You got 2 hours of me. Tell me what you're thinking about like CTAs and coming back, and what is it you do to avoid and build that trust?
So some of it is, if you have little modules, like build in, if you have a map of what your learning paths are or things you could do, have things that people should be doing. One of the things that I don't like is if you have a slide at the end that says, here's our community, or here's our support, or how to get support. Okay, that's great. But build something in for somebody to do something with it at the end. Like, okay, let's all go into documentation and have an activity where they use the documentation. Don't have all the steps written out, duplicated in your lab guide somewhere. Actually have an activity where we just give you a high-level outline framework. Now let's use the doc and start learning how to use the doc. Is one way to do it. But other things are more like if you have 3-minute TikToks, at the end of each one say, this is just scratching the surface. Go try this. And the next tech talk is going to tell you how to do the next level of it, which is this. And always leave them, like they say, leave them hungry. Don't just finish, leave them knowing there's more, so that they know, oh yeah, I better try this, but I better come back for more stuff. Because I think one of the fears educators have, is that people are going to think that they're done and get into trouble. Like that little knowledge is a dangerous thing piece. And so if you at least have these calls to action for more training also, not just for go do something in the product, but also there is more about this topic to learn. You're just not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
But go practice first, go try things, go blow things up. It's safe to do that in a, like if you have a test environment. I always learn from blowing stuff up. That's
yeah, we are kindred spirits in that. Just go screw it up and see what happens. Okay. Oh, that was bad. Yeah, don't.
Yeah, but you remember it, right? Well, yeah, I'm not doing that again.
I like this thread that you're talking about because I like to tell this story. When I was a university teacher, I did an adjunct role for quite a while, and I got to teach video game design.
Oh,
and it wasn't, it was really fun because it was a great fun topic. I knew a lot about it. But the thing that we did in that class that was a little bit different, it was a video game class. What am I going to grade on? So instead of doing things formally, I said, look, we're going to do activities every day, and they're designed around what we're learning. And those activities are there to get you up. Like I would lecture for 45 minutes and then I would sit down and then I go, okay, we have a group activity. Your job is to do X, and then have everybody in the class participate on it. Before long, I was not leading this class. I was leading it. I was facilitating it. I wasn't exhausted like your trainer was at the end of the day. You know why? Because, and I think, and this is not, I stumbled and got lucky, but the best trainers I've seen, my team formerly at Outreach, great at this. They would go in and go, all right, okay, I'm gonna teach you something. Okay, Joe, now you're going to take control and I'm going to watch you. I'm going to talk, but you're going to do what? And Joe's freaking out. Like, no. And everybody's like, Joe, you suck. Like, because it's a workshop online. But it's fun because now everybody kind of remembers that you've got a hook in that person's brain. They got called on. All right. But it was fun. And everybody else remembers Joe stumbling through doing something wrong. And they all remember that. Or when you're talking about your sandbox, try something. Don't be the fear of, oh gosh, the other thing I love to hear about is I remember I bought a Commodore 64 back I didn't, my parents did. Commodore 64, and the sales rep is like, my mom was like, oh, he's going to damage. Like, no, you can't damage these things. You can, apart from sitting an elephant on it, you're not going to break this. Just go try stuff. And I think that's what we need to do more of. Just go try. Don't dump and show. Let me do.
Yeah. Back in the day, we used to pull apart the machines and show people the inside because everybody thought, a computer was a magic box. And we're like, it's just switches that just flip around, and that's what it's doing.
Where were you doing training that you were pulling apart computers? Because I want to know now.
College. I was a TA for Computing 101 for people who knew nothing about computers.
Oh my God.
And I had a original IBM PC, the beta PC, and you could pull the back off, unscrew it. And I'm like, here's a board.
So, I think that's amazing because I remember being in a graduate class on computer science where they were trying to give us these really big concepts. Like, this is what RAM is. And I'm like, come on, guys, just pull it on computer and pull it out. And I'm glad you actually did that because it's, oh, wait, she pulled out the RAM. Now, what does this little thing do? And then you show a picture up on the board and you talk about, all the tech crap.
And in fact, we didn't even have to do that. We had an animated program that showed how it worked, and you could type in numbers and it would show how it added and all of that stuff. It was super cool.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Like I said, I'm a geek.
I love it. And that's why you're on the show. More geeks out there. Hey, join us. Here's a couple more things before we wrap up today.
Yeah.
The next topic you talked about is, okay, now we've designed stuff and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put a big word out there. And this is not a pejorative word, governance. In context of what we do, what is governance? What is it about and how does it matter?
Yeah. So it's sort of a level of maturity that you get to later on, I would think. And it's one of the things that we are starting to do at Okta, which is really nice to see is, say you have a concept like badging, okay, and your community has badging and your education has badging. And the badges have different names and different icons and different things. And we talked in the very beginning about users going around collecting badges. Isn't that confusing for your users?
Yeah.
And you have to do different things for it, and you're rewarded differently. And, you have different systems sometimes, right? So I've been at companies where they're not compatible at all, and they don't make any sense at all. And you do less thing, and you can game the system at some companies, right? So like you realize, oh, if I spend more time in one system, or if I do something that marketing does, I get better swag. So I should spend more time doing that than doing the training, because I'll get better swag, or I'll get more points, or whatever it is. And so one of the things that is sort of a more recent thing, which I think is fantastic, is they, just like the roadmap thing that I was talking about, is they brought together all the different parties and started to have the conversation of, well, can we at least agree on what we call things, so that we don't step on each other's toes? I'm not going to name my badge the same thing you're going to name, like we'll have a structure. And, can we make the badges, they don't have to look exactly the same, but can they be complementary? So they all, if we want to have things that people put out on LinkedIn, that they look like they came from the same company, not like 40 people ran around and just spun things up. Because I've been at companies where I didn't know somebody had a badge with the same exact name as the one I had. And all of a sudden I'm looking around going, and the same with naming. I created a curriculum, and this is really embarrassing. I was at a company, and we had this whole curriculum, fundamentals of whatever it was. And we had a newsletter. And I look at the newsletter, and the same day we launch fundamentals of whatever, please register. Marketing has a webinar called fundamentals of whatever, please register. And it's a completely different thing. And now our customers have no idea what to register for, or why one thing is 1 hour with whatever, and ours is 3 days with something else. So having a central, like, hey, governance isn't meant to be like, you can't do this. It's more like, here's a framework that we're all working together on. And when you're about to spin something new up, please come to the group and tell us what you're doing, and try and make it fit within this framework. Don't spin off something new every time. Try and make it fit within that framework. And if there's some compelling reason to do something new, let's all talk about it and see why, like, does it warrant doing something new? Then let's figure out how that, is there a new level that needs to come out? Is there a new category that needs to come out? If you're talking about like badging, is there a new shape we need? Then does everybody need it? But make it so that everybody can benefit from that new thing, not just go off and do it. Because sometimes people do things that are new because they didn't understand what existed, not because you needed something new. Maybe you just say, oh, if you just did it this way, it would fit within the existing framework of what's there, but they just didn't know.
Okay, so we could actually go right into the next topic, which will kind of expand upon the concept of governance. So if I get this correctly, and Sharon, I love this, because the more people I talk to, the more things get straightened out in my own head, and we can share that with everybody. The concept of governance is not so much a punitive or taking control, or like, but rather we're coordinating. Okay, what was the thing I was listening to on it was like a TikTok or a YouTube short or something like that, where they're talking about the emergence of governments. And they were talking about, hey, if you're a tribe out in some rural area, and under 25 people, you don't need to coordinate, because you see everybody, you talk to everybody, you know everybody. It's like when we were in the office all the time. You talk to people, they're there, you're going to go hang out, go get a beer after work, or you just eat lunch with. All that stuff has happened. And now I think this concept of governance and coordination is even more important. We're not going back fully, ever. Maybe not now. But part of governance then is change management and marketing efforts. Both internal change management is what I would call that. And then external is truly marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Can you tell me more about that now? So now we're like going from, okay, I've got an internal process, we're talking together. But this problem of, well, I didn't know, Sharon, that you had that program there. And then somebody being mad at you because they wasted months on something they're going to have to redo now, or you will, which you're going to be mad about. Tell me, what were you thinking about that?
Yeah. So I think the marketing needs to start, there's internal pieces and it needs to start at the beginning, not at the end, which I think a lot of groups don't think about. So what are all the constituencies that you need to tell up front, during, after, all the different channels, are there Slack channels you would have to announce it in? Are there, I remember talking to somebody and they said, well, they should know because they should be reading their email. They should be looking at their Slack channels. I'm like, well, some of these people travel all the time. I don't know how many emails they're going to read when they come back from traveling. And I don't even know if they've joined that particular Slack channel. There are 50,000 Slack channels and the information goes by. If you've been traveling, maybe you didn't see it. Like I don't know how people consume information, and different people consume information differently. And, maybe they have that channel muted. I don't know. So I feel like you have to tell people in 50 different ways because I don't remember stuff. I would assume.
What do you mean? Like, oh gosh, what? Most of the companies I've been at, they've done all hands or stand-ups or whatever. And a strategy that my team would use would be to send emissaries to those all the time and just have like a 3-minute bit on, hey, here's what customer education did. And was like, okay, thanks. But they would see it.
Yeah. We do that too. But again, who's the person who missed the meeting? Are they watching the recording?
Yeah.
We have enablement things that are required at some places. How many people actually pay attention to it, remember it? Just the amount of information that every individual is required to know at every company these days is so extensive that I say you have to give people space and grace and not be annoyed with them that they don't know everything that I do. Like, I'd love to think that everybody cares about what I do for my job every day. I don't know what they do every day. So I don't know why I should think that they should care about every single thing.
They should care, Sharon. You're an important person.
They should. They really should, because I'm like the center of the universe. But, so I kind of try and give people a little buy on that one and just know that I have to do that. And then I had people create playbooks and other things on what materials we have and update those playbooks and customer facing materials for them to use, for CSMs to use, so they don't create their own slides. And here's customer facing materials you can use. Here's things you can put on the company website so that the people who are overworked, who do the updates to the website, don't have to think about that all themselves. They can change it if they need to, but here's a start. Because I know they usually have 2 people for a giant company and all of that.
I have two stories to add on to this, not stories, but things that we did. One of them is that I had some scripts run, and we had an object or something that people would record their time to, right? So I could see my entire success team. And if they ever log time towards training, what I would do is I would build a mechanism that would go to these people and say, hey, I see that you've done 30 hours of training this month, but did you know, I bet you did know, that we have this program and all of these assets are already here. There's on-demand and live training. You, Judy, don't have to do this training and it will save you some time. So it's like the what's in it for me is the real value that we bring as customer education. And if like anybody I'm breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience right now, I think the real challenge to us is do things like, okay, when I was at Outreach, one of the coolest things, Sharon, that we were able to do because our platform supported this internally, not just with our customers, is we could create little things called snippets or templates. And what my team did is proactively put every single course into a snippet with the value, the delivery, and a link to it.
Cool.
And that was in, so if now I'm a CSM or I'm a salesperson and I go, like actually the way the product would work, sometimes I would even be prompted that the customer wants training. And I go, oh, Sharon, guess what? I'm going to send you a link. Boom, there it is. now this is the training link you want to go to. Hey, come back to this and talk to me later after you've done this. Oh gosh, how valuable that is. You've saved a CSA or rep time. You've saved the customer time, and you actually you helped them set up and like we've seeded all our knowledge around, but we have to get people to understand that's there. That was a very in your face way of doing it because it was right in the platform.
Yep.
But we don't always have that opportunity.
And you had a CTA in it too. Come back and talk to me when you've done it, so we know that there's something.
Yeah, or you could even track that, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the real fun ones where you get to the point where you can actually see people did something that you asked them to do, and then you have a CTA, which is come now do this. Oh, cool. Gainsight did a lot of this kind of stuff where it was the calls to action, and then I would do something and that would hint, like now me as a CSM might say, oh, Sharon, you know what? I saw that your entire team took this training. And, you know, I could be coming back to you and saying, now your usage of the platform has gone up. I could share an EBR, a quarterly business review with you as a customer, as an education leader. Like I want to build these kinds of things with my customer base to show my team how consumption of education always ends up with a positive net ROI.
Yep. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We've covered a lot today. We're getting towards the end here. Anything else? Number one, I appreciate having the time with you today. This is really cool to talk about this specific problem. That the user is one of the most, like, this is why we call it customer education, because the customer is important. If we're not meeting them and talking with them and meeting their needs, and we're insular and isolated and we even silo ourselves, this is why customer education in most times doesn't work. And this is why you see things like layoffs and other things, because you're not proving the value of the platform that you're delivering. So that's how I would wrap that up. Anything else that you want to add to the discussion for the day?
I think that was the point you just made. Where are your customers getting their education? How are they getting their education? How do they like to consume education on other things?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are they doing today for anything else?
Yeah. Like meet customers where they're at.
Meet customers where they're at. It's
super hard though, you know, to think about that, because unless you're all working together and coordinating your efforts, as a company, not as a person in a team. You know, this is something that I always talk about. You know, those of you who are out there and interviewing for jobs as a customer education leader, that's one thing you want to ask. It's how integral can I be to work with my peers? How can I work across the boundaries? What does my leadership say about this function that we're bringing into the company or that we already have? And if you don't have that kind of strategic alignment, then you might want to like ask harder questions or not go there. All right. So last bit for you. Anything else you want to say to the audience? I think you have your LinkedIn. We're just streaming this live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Hey, anybody wants to reach out to Sharon, what would you say your biggest strength areas are that you like to talk to people about? If anyone were to reach out to you.
Really, how to get more, it's those things you were talking about relative to Gainsight. How do you get people, meet them where they're at, but then how do you really translate that into business? How do you get more adoption? How do you get more expansion? How do you really leverage training as a business entity, not just as a training entity?
Love it. All right, Sharon, on that, again, I want to thank you for being on the show. I have to do my spiel now, which is I'm going to show off the managed services program that we have here at Service Rocket. Again, I'm wearing all the gear. This is our Sika Henry support, gear, because this is one of our people that we support in sports and athletics, and it's really cool. We have a program at Service Rocket, and this is why we really like to work with folks like you, Sharon, who are leaders out there. None of us all have the answers, but we're trying. And what we have is an advisor services program, plus a whole lot more. If you need help, if you want to lay everything out and get a plan and be able to understand exactly where your journey should go, including things like, when do we talk to the customers? How do we manage that? How do we do change management internally to our company? Look, we've been here, we've done that. At Service Rocket, we have a really amazing program right now that's been developing over the years. So I like to put up stuff like this. We'll come in and work with you, do a discovery workshop, help you build your roadmap, understand the strategy, And we work with folks like you, Sharon, to fill our knowledge gaps. So if you want to reach out to me, head to that page. I'll have a link in the show notes. And reach out to Sharon for her expertise as well at any time. Sharon, I think you're on LinkedIn, so we're a pretty tight community out there. All right, everybody. Well, we are going to wrap up. And as I always like to say, this show, again, is about technology and learning, and particularly customer education. So thanks once again, Sharon, for joining the show. Hey, everybody, again, if you're not learning, you're churning, help your customers out, follow us, get out there on LinkedIn. And if you're watching, leave some comments. We want to hear your questions. All right. Well, cheers, everybody. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon.